Evidently, I recorded nothing in here last night from 8:30. Because I was looking, I was like, what's happening?
8:30 p.m.
Thursday, August 24th.
Hello, good morning, I'm good, how are you?
That's a fancy one in the door.
I mean, you can, yeah, because you can sign it. Yeah, you can talk about maybe getting your comments section. Are they coming this morning?
We're going to go ahead and call that out in order. Good morning. We're going to call our meeting to order. I'd like to welcome you to our work session this morning. I would ask if you have cell phones, to please turn them off at this time. We will stand and have pledge of allegiance by Councilmember Joyce and prayer by Councilmember Reed.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
If you would like to pray with us, would you please remain standing? Dear God of us all, we thank you for this day, a day that you have made, a day that we shall all rejoice and be glad in. Thankful that you have allowed us to come together just once more and again to make decisions on behalf of the citizens of Madison. We ask you to give us in-depth recall and insight, God, to make the proper decisions. We ask it all in the mighty name of Jesus. Amen?
Amen. I'm sure Councilmember Wagenhouse is probably on the way, and Councilmember Latham will not be with us this morning. We have our minutes for review. I hope you had a chance to read your minutes of our work session and call meeting of August the 4th and our regular meeting of August the 14th. If you have a chance to read, if I can get a nod to put these on our consent agenda for our regular meeting of August 14th. Thank you so much for putting it on this agenda.
Was it just the two meetings, Fred?
The work session and the regular meeting, I think so, yes, just those.
Two meetings?
Yeah,
And the last one was just an adjustment of the previous.
Yes, to the 4th, the second email you got to me.
Good morning.
Over here all by myself. Have I been bad?
Again.
Topics for discussion, natural gas rate structure attachment 1. John.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We just wanted to follow up on our original presentation that was offered about a month ago, where Rusty Johnson and Scott Tollison from the Gas Authority presented a proposal. The reason that it's not happening during the budgetary process is we had asked for some research and backup from the Gas Authority that took some time to receive. We've now received that, and it's part of your package that Ashley provided to you. Our gas rates have not gone up in some time, and our expenses have gone up. In addition, Rusty is in a precarious position in terms of not having enough staff. He's afraid that ultimately either we're going to spend too much money on overtime, or that, more importantly, that an employee is going to get hurt because they're being asked to do, Rusty's needing to push them beyond what might be seen as reasonable. So we wanted to put a proposal together that is reasonable, and it is before you. It goes from 5.26 to 5.82. Decatherms, don't ask me to explain that to you. But the next 2 pages are the most important, I think, charts, because it shows where Madison is compared to all of the other cities in the region and beyond. And you can see presently, because we haven't had a rate increase in so long, we're presently 5th lowest out of all of the, you all should have received a colored chart. We're 5th lowest. And with the rate increase, it would go up to 7. So there's some 30 cities, and with the rate increase, we would still be 7th lowest. And so I mentioned to the council that we're not trying to pressure you or push for a vote or whatever, that I didn't want to put it on a formal agenda until you're ready to vote, if you are in fact ready to vote. But I'm just bringing it up today to see if there are additional questions, and if there are, I can have Rusty and our staff and the folks from the Gas Authority provide you additional documentation. The other issue I would want to raise is that we do have 2 prospects that are qualified, that are experienced gas votes for very different reasons, are interested in coming to work for Madison, and Rusty's hoping he doesn't lose the opportunity to get these 2 experienced workers. It's very difficult to find. You can't find experienced workers. It's such a unique field. It's very difficult to do that, and he has an opportunity. So, as I said, I just wanted to put it on. This is a work session. If you have additional questions, you let me know. I'll get the answers from the Gas Authority and to Rusty, and when you're ready to go, we'll push it forward.
The 2 employees, John, would be existing positions that are now vacant, so it wouldn't need a budget amendment to add 2 new employees?
No, the additional revenues from the rate increase would pay for the, we don't have funding for the 2 positions that are now, that he's looking at. He doesn't have enough money to hire.
Yeah, so these are additional.
These are 2 additional to try to begin to address his manpower shortage.
Mr. Mayor, may I? May I?
Sure.
So the rate increase would pay for the 2 new employees?
That is correct.
So, John, you said that you was going to leave it up to the council discretion as to when you wanted to do this?
Well, as I said, it's unorthodox. I don't like to even present these outside the budget, but there were reasons for us to do it. And if we wait too long, it's not the end of the world, but Rusty's going to lose an opportunity to get two good folks. So if your inclination is not to support this, then we'll drop it. And if you'd like to go forward, if you could do it sooner than later, that would help Rusty out.
And I think we talked about this when I worked with I don't see no reason why the council can't move forward. If our council would agree to put this on our work session for September, our meeting for September the 9th, and let's move forward. But does our council have any objection to put this on our meeting for September the 9th? If you would put those on our meeting for September the 9th, actually. Thank you. Sure.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yes, sir. Stormwater update?
Yes, Mayor, we wanted to, at this work session, talk about this whole issue. We talked about this during the budgetary process because we have some real challenges. And what we don't have in Madison is a stormwater program, nor do we have a funding source. And we're increasingly getting more and more issues that more and more citizens are getting frustrated with because we don't have a program to address them. So I presented this in the budget and indicated that I would work with Aaron Wadley to put a program together. And so Aaron is going to address two things today. One is the overall program that we're proposing, and then talk about some specific challenges that we have. Since we don't have a program, though, there are some basic or fundamental questions that maybe Jay can help us with, and that is, under what circumstances would we assist, especially if it's someone on private property? What are the parameters of that? What are the fundamentals in terms of making a decision about under what circumstances are we going to help and what circumstances is the city not? We haven't, I don't think, really gotten into that because we don't have a program. So part of the program would be to clarify, to work with our citizens to make sure they know under what circumstances we would help and what circumstances are beyond our parameters. I will say that I have had numerous meetings with citizens, and citizens that don't follow us every day are surprised that we don't have a program, and in some instances they're annoyed and frustrated. And so I think it's time for Madison to put a program together to be responsive to our citizens, and that's what we're trying to do. And Aaron has a basic program that he wants to discuss today, and then also talk about some specific concerns. Aaron?
Yes, thank you. So you see in the sheet that I handed out labeled City of Madison Stormwater Utility Discussion. In the top left corner is a need. These are known projects or complaints that we have put some estimates to just throughout the city. There are other ones that Aaron Tewksbury has identified. We have a big need. We have old infrastructure in this city, as you all know. And a lot of the stormwater piping alone has kind of met its end of life. Currently, the city has not programmed enough money to do the replacements needed, just because it's such a big task. So John has begun looking at stormwater utility. I want to discuss that. But this is just a handful of projects that we know of. You see, one of those, Project 2, is expected to be about $400,000. That is generally extra budgetable. It's not something we can plan for every day. It's something we need to plan ahead for. So that's what we're wanting to do now. So the process of looking at a stormwater program, stormwater utility, generally we would want the entire system mapped. Currently our stormwater system is not mapped. It does not show up in GIS. We have a few known points that have been pulled off of the aerial photography, but we don't know all of the piping that's underground. We really need a system map all the way from downstream where it leaves the city or enters a creek or waterway, all the way up to the street, to each individual structure. Without that, we don't know what our need is. So figuring out the need is the first step. After that, we need to use that mapping system to generate a capital improvement list that would use projects like we have in the left-hand corner here. It would use those items as well as just a typical stormwater replacement schedule, as in this corrugated metal pipe should only last 50 years. It's been there 75. We know it needs to be replaced. And that would generate kind of a long-term capital improvement list. using all of that, we would know what our long-term need is, what our long-term cost for stormwater is. And we would break that down across the entire city, map the impervious area, which is houses, driveways, parking lots, and find out, that's really what's contributing. That's what's changed in Madison. It used to all be forest, now it's parking lots, houses, driveways. So we would map those areas, and that's going to tell us how much each parcel, each business, each homeowner is contributing to our stormwater. And we would break that down to find out what a rate might look like. It's an ERU, it's a rate unit that's used based off of 1,000 square foot typically on these things. So we have talked to a few different engineering firms. We have 4 that we've looked at so far, and we broke it down into those 4 tasks. Task 1, 2, 3, 4 that I just described. It's up there in the right-hand corner. That's the typical process for coming up with this. Alternatively, we know that there's an upfront cost to mapping. We know there's an upfront cost to writing an ordinance for stormwater. We know there's upfront administrative cost to this. We also know there's ongoing cost, things that we'll need. So on the bottom, I've got an option that I believe we could start, go ahead and get ahead of all these tasks and go ahead and begin bringing in some revenue. Ongoing, we're going to need somebody to manage the program. We're going to need additional GIS help because this is a very GIS-heavy program. Anytime you look at stormwater, there is a lot of information, a lot of points, a lot of lines, a lot of attributes that somebody needs to manage and be able to get to consultants, get to property owners, get to developers. And then we're also going to need maintenance. If we've got a program, it's no point in having a program if we're not doing ongoing maintenance, helping Aaron and his crew out, maybe getting some contractors in to do some general on-call type stuff. So you can kind of see what those costs are. I would expect annual cost, this is just initially looking at it, concept level, to be about $145,000 a year. I would expect it to take about $135,000 to start up this program. And we've actually spoken with some engineering firms, and we know that that $135,000 is probably going to be close to what we're going to need to get this kicked off. So I would break that down. I propose breaking that down as our base cost. Every utility, gas, water, electric, they all have a base unit cost. If you don't use any that month, you're going to have a base rate that you're going to pay. And these costs are going to be hard costs you're going to incur. And I think the council could look at breaking this up into a base unit cost just to get things started. That would give us the funds we need to map the system, and it would give us the funds we need to look at the impervious area of every parcel of the city so that there's a fair and equitable rate distribution across the city. I think that sounded really complicated, so do you all have any questions about that?
To start with, if I could, Mayor, I was surprised, Aaron, that our current GIS does not pick up stormwater infrastructure.
It has some in there, but it's limited. It's very labor intensive to find. Things get put in over the years, and we don't know what it all is. And so it takes a lot of effort to go and map all of that.
Is you mentioned the funding, is that based on setting up a stormwater utility district, the taxable situation, or are you looking at general fund to be paying for this sort of stuff?
So that's up for you guys to decide, honestly.
It really is. The first question is, do you believe we should do this? And then the second question, if so, do you set up a utility like other cities, some other cities have, or do you incorporate it within your property tax? It's 6 of one and half a dozen of the other. At the end of the day, I guess it's all the same, but if you want accountability so that this money can only be used for the purposes for which it was raised, then it probably would make sense to form a utility and have a rate. If it's a program like a department, then we could incorporate it in the property tax.
if I'm reading this right, then the bulk of the money that we see there at the bottom of that page, that's all kind of setup costs. That's not really doing any improvements.
That does not include the projects.
Yeah.
So that's just ongoing maintenance, just to maintain the system. And that's something that most cities do have, some kind of stormwater program, either a rate schedule or it's incorporated in the budget. And you've got a minimal level of effort that it takes to do that.
Mr. Mayor?
I'm sorry.
Yes.
I was thinking utility rate, but I was also wondering if we could maybe chase some grants for this project as well.
Absolutely, especially the larger projects. The
Yes.
larger projects are suited so that we would set this up so that the larger projects, we would have a component to try to chase a grant.
Yes.
Because there are grants out there for this purpose.
And I know, John, that we have a special governmental relation person with GMA that we can tap into, and she have a special relationship with Washington DC.
Yeah.
We might want to just talk to her, you know, and see what she can do to help us along the way.
There are a lot of resiliency funding sources right now. I met with Corbett Reynolds at GDOT District 2, and he said a lot of cities are having some success with receiving the resiliency funds, and those are direct funds from the federal government. So there's definitely grant opportunities to do some of these programs.
The next step might be, if you're interested in taking it the next step, I might suggest that we do a survey and let you know what surrounding communities are doing, how they're addressing this and what their funding source is and whatever. And I also, as I said, want to sit down with legal to really explore the whole issue of responsibility and legal liability and what other cities do, what parameters they put on. So I would suggest that as a next step.
We got to start somewhere.
Yes.
Let's start. Yeah. Thank you, Eric. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Well, if I can ask John, and is there, if we decide we want to move forward on this, and we're looking at, well, at least $150,000 just to kind of get the program going, where is that money coming from right now?
We budgeted $200,000 for stormwater. Of course, we had hoped that that money could be used for emergency issues that are out in the community or whatever, but we do have budgeted $200,000, and I think Aaron was advocating instituting a program to get money in right away. So it could either be institution of a utility or designation of existing property taxes or taking it from somewhere else.
You know, I'm sure we all remember, I think it was David Nunn brought in an outside consultant who was promoting the idea of the stormwater utility district, and he was kind of persuasive in my mind. It seemed to make sense to me, but I know there's a lot of, none of us want to say what did we do for you today? Well, we gave you a new tax today. That's what we did. Nobody wants to do that, but I remember that presentation. I don't remember what company that was or who that was, but I thought it was really instructive, and maybe something more specific to the establishment of a stormwater utility district might be helpful to have someone like that come back again. Does that make any sense, anybody?
I think it does.
Yeah, I remember I don't remember the name, but I definitely remember we talked about stormwater. We talked about the stormwater rate as well. So yeah, if they came back in, I think that would give us, you know, a little bit more information, a little bit more of what we need to hear.
And most times, our council was always a little hesitant because we always thought about people who could or couldn't afford it, you know. And I just tell people this: Georgia Power send you a letter, they're going to raise your rates. You either stay with Georgia Power, or they cut your bill off. Spectrum sends you a bill, we're going to raise your rates. You either keep a cable or they cut your bill off. So our city has been lenient, really.
Yeah.
And we have not forced this issue, but there comes a time when the city has to step up to the plate and protect the city, you know, and the residents in our city. So.
And I agree with John's point about talking to Jay and legal about really where do our responsibilities lie. We have the one case for one property owner, a $400,000 fix. Ouch. that's not, that's not gonna work citywide, so,
You gotta have some help.
Yeah, I definitely think that legal needs to let us know exactly what we need to do, because over the year, this is my 10th year, and we've had a good many things that happen with stormwater. And some stuff we did, and some things we did, and some things we didn't do, but we need for legal to let us know what we can and can't do legally for our citizens.
Mr. Mayor, I look forward to seeing what other communities and hopefully some of our
Yes, Rick.
size and how they structure it and what the cost is, new cost. I don't get, to me, if it comes out of general funds or if we set up a stormwater, it is significantly what happens in the other areas. It's still taxpayer money.
That's right,
And
Rick.
we would be prudent with it, even if we didn't have, a designated program, in my view, but I'd like to see what the cost to the property owners and citizens are in other communities, that would be helpful.
Sounds good. Thank you. Any more comments? If not, we'll move to Ms. Karen, our Main Street Director. Karen, there you go. Aaron, I'm sorry. Good morning.
Morning.
This is a grant that we have applied for over the numerous years. Each variety of different departments. I think this is the second time that the street department has applied for this particular grant. I know Colin with the police and Gene with the fire have done this as well. So it's a safety and liability grant. I think it's about $10,000 that you can apply for. So this year what we're applying for is delineators and barricades. And these barricades and delineators would be used for a variety of purposes, primarily to help with Colleen and Main Street with parades, but also for street, for storms, utility, for cuts, whatever the case may be. So there'll be delineators and barricades purchased, but I think there's roughly 100. So I'm also including a trailer to be able to contain all these goods in a organized fashion. But this is something that we share department-wise. We just kind of rotate every other year. We get it. We let the police get it. We let Gene get it as well. I think we initially purchased the goods and then we're reimbursed. Is that correct? So that's what we're planning on doing this year.
what is a delineator?
It is a very complicated thing.
It's a piece of wood, isn't it?
No, actually, it's plastic. It's just so you have the sawhorse style barricades, but the delineator is just a single pole, and it's weighted. And a lot of times we use this, so we're changing parade routes that we have in the past, and so delineators have a small hole at the bottom that you're able to run rope just to kind of corral the general public in the general direction that you want them not or to go. But it's just public safety is the main reason why we're doing this.
And this looks like a GMA program?
Yes. Yep. It is referred to as the Safety and Liability Management Grant Program.
How much is the grant for?
To my knowledge, it's $10,000. We're just a tick over $10,000 just because of the amount of barricades in the trailer. We've had some increases in product, but we're roughly $10,000.
Mr. Mayor, if I could, probably 3/4 of all of the calls that I get, either from you or from the citizens, are an issue that relates to Aaron's operation. And I'm old enough to have seen a lot of people come and go and whatever, and I just wanted to publicly state that I have not worked for a department head or a staff person that is more responsive than Aaron.
Oh, thank you. We appreciate it.
And
Try.
and I would add to that, John, if I could, we keep giving more responsibility and more geography for Aaron to cover. We add parks, we add trails, we keep adding more and more stuff, and it seems like we could have a full department doing nothing but dealing with city trees at the moment. But let me ask you, Aaron, in this chart here, the premium level and grant level, I can see the $10,000 grant level, I understand that.
Right.
What is that premium level on the left supposed to mean?
That is something I saw. We have not entertained that idea of going that far. Primarily, the grant is just for that 10,000, the lower level. This is the first time I've been this involved in it. I had someone help me with the first go-round, Rhonda. So that was something I was going to look into, seeing if we could climb the ladder just a little bit, if there's more specific things in which we have to.
That premium level, this grant is based on the premium that we pay for our property insurance. And so that is premium levels that you can apply for according to what we pay every year for our premiums for insurance.
And where are we on that list of premiums?
It is actually about 5%, it's the 5% of the premium, we're just shy of 200,000.
Okay.
We just learned about this grant in DE&I class. So that's when I knew. I didn't even realize that the city was getting this grant each year. So yes, it's a very good grant.
The main thing that the first time we applied and got money was for some safety equipment for tree removal. I know we've purchased a truck. We didn't use the money for the truck, but we did purchase some safety equipment to go along with the truck. So this is something that Mr. Joyce and I spoke of yesterday about removing trees, and so it just allows us to be a little more diverse and not so heavily reliant on other contractors. Of course, we were given specific direction. Just because we have a truck doesn't mean we have to take them down. We can still reach out to other contractors. So if we feel comfortable, then we do. But this is just more safety equipment. It's primarily what we are purchasing this equipment for.
Thank you, sir, for the update. Appreciate
No problem.
that.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Do we need to authorize proceeding ahead with this loan application or just
This
for
grant.
this grant application?
You could add it to the consent agenda for the regular meeting on the 11th.
Sounds good.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Alcohol ordinance update.
Good morning, you all.
Good morning.
Probably no better time to talk about alcohol than 9 a.m. Friday before holiday weekend, so.
On Friday?
Yeah. So I've been working with Ashley, and she's expressed some concerns with the alcohol ordinance. I think she does the heavy lifting with the alcohol licenses in town, and it is not an uncommon problem that the alcohol ordinances sometimes get outdated, and y'all's is overly burdensome on you all, which it doesn't need to be. So the main goal of our revisions here, and I'll go through them, is to take a lot of the burden of alcohol licenses off you all and put a little bit more on Ashley, but also take it off Ashley because she doesn't have to come present them all to you. So the two main things we did in this was, one, we made alcohol licenses an administrative grant power for Ashley. So rather than you all having a list of 15 or 20 that you all need to approve at the end of the year, Ashley just approves them if they meet all the guidelines. So she reviews the applications. My understanding is she reviews them anyway. She makes a recommendation. Y'all just rubber stamp them and move on. We're just allowing her to grant them or deny them as she sees fit. If she denies one for whatever reason, you have to give them an appeal process that will come before you, but I've seen that to be very rare occasions. The other complaint that Ashley expressed, which was on y'all's behalf, is that you don't want underage drinking hearings anymore. I think that that's been something that's come before y'all a bit maybe in the past, and y'all don't want to do that anymore. And the only reason that those were coming to you is because by your ordinances, first offense, second offense, third offense, whatever it is, of a licensee serving underage kids, it was mandated to come to you before a hearing. I've taken that out of this ordinance, this proposed ordinance, and really it's just like any other city ordinance violation. It just goes to city court. So they serve underage once, it'll go to the solicitor, it'll go in front of the city judge, they'll get a fine or whatever, they'll go on their merry way. There's no mandate for you all to suspend or revoke a license out of certain things. I have now made that in your discretion. So if the same business is serving minors, and you've heard about this from the police or citizens or whoever, and they've done it 5 times in 6 months, and you all feel like they need to be suspended or revoked, you all can start that process, then it'll come for a hearing. You have to be the ones to give and take away. The city gives the license, they have to be the ones that take away it, so it'll be in y'all's power to take away that license if y'all deem necessary, but there is no required hearing anymore of someone on their second offense having to come before you, and you have lawyers presenting evidence, and y'all hearing evidence, and y'all acting as a judge. It'll be in your discretion, and that only discretion is if, you know, there's a repeat offender and y'all feel like y'all need to take action to stop that. So, those are the two big changes. I'll go through some more specific changes, but are there any questions on those two things?
Thank you.
I have a question. if I can.
Sure, go
Jay,
ahead.
Jay, is that typical in cities' ordinances to not have, you know, 1 strike, 2 strikes, 3 strikes, you're out, and suspensions and things like
That
that?
is what you all have been doing is unique to Madison, in my opinion. It is much more common that it is a discretionary thing to take away someone's license, which will be an act of the city, and that's when you have any hearing, and that's really just a due process.
So let's say that somebody, if it happened and you had a second repeat offender within 6 months,
Yeah.
and it goes now to the city judge, is that
Yes.
right?
Yes,
And
so
then he or she would be-
it'll just be like any code enforcement or whatever, any other ordinance violation. So it'll go to the solicitor, it'll go in front of the judge discretions, he can fine up to $1,000 or whatever. If it's the first time based on the thing, he might fine them $500 and say, don't do it again. And if the same person shows back up 3 months later, he'll probably fine him $1,000. And if he does it again, it'll probably gonna catch your attention somehow. And y'all can talk about what you want to do, suspend the license, revoke the license, do whatever you want. But it'll be in your discretion. It's not a mandatory. First offense, they got to come before you. You have to give this amount of fine, and you have to give this as suspension. Second offense, they have to come before you again. You have to give this fine, you have to give this suspension. Third one, 3 strikes, you're out, sort of thing, is how it's written now. It's much more in y'all's discretion based on the circumstances. So if a licensee does it, and then they come to court and get fined, and 3 years later they do it again, well, it's probably enough time where y'all aren't going to raise any eyebrows, it's just going to happen. But if it's a repeat problem and y'all find it a problem, y'all have the power to suspend it or revoke it.
I have a question, if you may. So what you said was if, so it's fine going through the judge first time, second time, third time, and you'd say, well, it would come to your attention somehow after the third time. That sounds rather kind of vague, arbitrary, like.
It's just how you hear about anything else in town. I'm sure the police chief or a police officer will say, well, you know, I don't want to use any specific businesses in town, but Joe's Bottle Shop or whatever, you know, we've issued him 3 violations for serving the minors in the last month. I mean, that's how you're going to sort of hear about it, or Ashley's going to hear about it, or a citizen is going to hear about it, or something and let you know. It's probably going to be from a police chief or the judge that the same person's been violating. That's probably how you would hear about it.
Well, I wonder if there's a way that we could maybe more formalize that so that
Okay.
after 3 strikes, we actually, it comes to our attention. It actually brings it to our attention, or somebody says, okay, now we just want you to look at this for your information purposes. I mean, I think that's more rather than just leaving it to chance. I get that it's probably a very good chance we'd hear about it, but there might not be. I mean, I'd just like to see that formalized personally.
I agree with that.
So 3 violations of a licensee.
At the third.
The city clerk lets council know, hey, it's their 3rd strike, and,
Yeah.
you know, it's either been over the last 3 months or it's been over the last 5 years. I just wanted to let you know, sort of thing. And here were the offenses.
Well, I suppose I don't know if we need to put a time limit on the thing. I mean, again, as you say, you know, if it's 3 offenses over 5 years, yeah, I mean, I hate that.
It's
but
gonna happen.
That's gonna, yeah. But 3 offenses in 6 months bothers me. That tells me somebody's not doing their job. So I don't know whether it's worthwhile, again, just to minimize the amount of responsibility we're putting on, adding more to Ashley or whoever. If we say within a year, you know, 3 offenses within a year, then that comes to the attention of the council. I mean, again, unless that's micromanaging and we just say 3 offenses, let us know, I don't know. Personally, like I said, I don't.
I think personally, even 2 in a year, because I don't know how often they run
Once a year.
okay.
Once a year from the Department of Revenue. We've had an instance where our officers have encountered that. So, I don't know.
I think that's the only way we ever get these things is
Yeah.
when the state
State
wants to do a
does it.
sting thing. I can't recall any other source of. Is the only change in this end, I mean, we're still going to get the same cases coming to us for some kind of decision, but the change is we're just getting rid of mandatory requirements and making it more discretionary?
Yes.
Okay, is it? Well, one of the concerns I have with past processes, we haven't shown any real consistency, in my opinion, in how we administer penalties. It's like, now, part of me thinks that's maybe not a good thing, but then maybe that is how you want to administer justice, is with looking at each case individually.
Yeah, and so the fines and stuff are gonna be in the discretion of the judge, so you put it in his or her hands, I don't know who the city judge is, but, so they have discretion, they look at it case by case basis. You know, if it's, well, you've sold alcohol to minors 3 times over the year, it's gonna be a higher fine than the guy that sold it and someone presented a bad fake ID or whatever, you know, it's probably gonna be a slap on the wrist or anything like that. But it is a case-by-case basis on what the punishment should be.
And we're only dealing with the actual liquor license itself, and the other penalties related to the clerk who, nothing really to do directly, that goes through the court. I'm concerned that, does this really take any load off Ashley, who I think spends an inordinate amount of time on alcohol issues? Does it, I'd like to put more on our municipal court, if that's possible, and less on Ashley and less on us.
Well, the violation will be the municipal court. The only thing that's on Ashley is the approving and denying, which she's already doing 99.9% of it, and she just brings it to you all, and y'all vote yes on all of them every single year. So it's just taking that out of her hands. So it's probably taking a little bit off of her. You know, tell me if I'm wrong.
I
You know,
think so.
prepare that council
And it'll be more business friendly, I think, but I don't have to hold up their application processes for a month. If they come in like a day after we've had a meeting, I'm like, sorry. So I think it'll add some efficiency to the application process as far as me being able to approve or
And we
deny.
truly do just rubber stamp it every time based on your recommendations that they've met all the requirements.
And y'all, another unique thing is, a lot of cities, the first approval of the alcohol license will be mayor and council, but the renewals will be administrative. And my understanding is y'all do the renewals every single year too. So anybody that's got an alcohol license, y'all vote on every single December, I think. So, I mean, that's gonna clear up your December council meeting a lot, so.
Any more questions for Jim? Thank you so much.
Thank you.
For clearing that up for us. Appreciate that. Okay, Mr. City Manager?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I do have some items for you this morning. I have been working with a university. As you'll recall, during the budgetary process, we talked about a community survey. And I've actually shown several of you an example, and I'd be delighted to sit down with any of you if you're interested in seeing the breadth and the scope of the survey that we're talking about. I have several examples from surveys that I did in other communities, but once we do this, I don't think there's going to be any questions about where our citizens stand or feel about a wide range of things, not only issues, from why did you stay here, why did you move here, what do you like about Madison, what don't you like about Madison, how are our services, do you plan to move in the next 5 years, why? I mean, there's just a whole myriad of questions or whatever, and I think that we'll be much better off after the survey is done in terms of an understanding, because we all are creatures of our own environment, so we kind of think that we know. I don't, because I'm new here, but even in my hometown, I thought I had a good fix on how people feel, but there's going to be some surprises in this survey, because we only communicate and talk to the folks we talk to. We don't talk to 3/4 of the community or whatever. So, but if we're going to do a survey, we need it done professionally and accurately, because people immediately say, well, why don't you just do a survey monkey on the internet, or why don't you just do a mail survey or whatever. There's a reason why everyone running from president down to dog catcher uses a certain method for surveying, because it's the most accurate. And that's what we're talking about here. So hopefully in the fall, and maybe probably winter, we will be undertaking this, and I'll keep you updated. It also gives all of our departments and services a benchmark, because we'll be asking people how they feel about our fire department, police department, and various services or whatever, and it creates a benchmark for us to always improve, because that's what we should be doing. And so I just wanted to give you a quick update on that. 3 items on the budget. Believe it or not, we're already starting to talk about 2025 budget. And as you recall, we changed the budget book in the presentation. The big change next year is going to be performance measurement. And part of that is what I just talked about. There's going to be a benchmark for people to say 70% of the people think you're doing a good job. What are you going to do to improve that? And you're not only going to know that 70% of the people think you're doing a good job, you're going to know what the elderly think. You're going to know, you're going to be able to know what young folks think. You're going to be able to know what our minority community thinks. You're going to be able to know what others think. It breaks it down demographically, and so it's going to be the basis for our performance measurement process. Where I had a staff meeting last Friday. And I want to make sure that we're not asking you to commit funding in the budget and then we don't go forward with the project. I want to make sure that our budgets are accurate, so when we ask you for a vehicle, we buy the vehicle. Yes. Because we need the vehicle. It isn't just like a wish list that you get, because once you give money to one department, you're not giving it to others, and worthwhile projects don't get funded. And so I'm watching the capital items in our small equipment purchases very carefully to make sure they're getting done. And also, Karen will be before you, I think, in September, October, Karen, to do the final budget reconciliation, which she does every year, to finish out last year. I've sat down and met with Aaron, and he's putting a proposal together, a plan together for glass recycling. As you know, that was discussed in this year's budget, and we're looking at this point at a residential recycling pickup recycling program, and also the possibility of a centralized location for recycling as well. So as we go forward, we'll continue to update you on that. We voted to privatize our custodial services, and we were delighted that we got over 12 proposals. We've evaluated them, selected one, and I think, are we starting, Karen, in October? October 2nd. We'll start with that. The county has taken over animal control. They've had it a month. There has been some surprises in terms of the number of calls we're getting or whatever, but as in any transition, we're taking it day by day, because what if this, and will the county do that, and with those types of questions. But Adam and Mark over at the county have been terrific, and I'm talking to them weekly about this as we go forward. So there should be no difference to our citizens. They call the same number that they've always called. The only difference is that the county's going to be picking up instead of the city. And this is a one-year trial by both the city and the county. That was the arrangement. We want to make sure that they're happy doing it and that we're happy having them do it, because we wanted to save money, but we don't want a significant reduction in the level of service. So we're watching that almost on a weekly basis. The Safari, as you probably know, is moving on. They're talking about a soft opening by the end of the year and a real opening by the beginning of the year. We got a nice letter from Mike Conrads, one of the co-owners of the Safari, and we have implemented a plan to work with them as developers. So we've been meeting like every 2 or 3 weeks with Rusty and Wayne Gann and Karen and myself, and I think it's a kind of a prototype. The email that I sent to you from Mike was very complimentary about they had concerns about working with the city or whatever, but we have allayed their concerns, and they were very complimentary about the whole process, how it's worked, and how it's worked for them. So not only has it worked for Safari, we're hoping when the next big development comes in, that we'll try to use the same system where we're communicating regularly, so there's no drop balls and there's no misunderstandings or whatever. We started our Human Resources Department, and Karen is here, but at the staff meeting, she updated the employees on 5 or 6 issues or whatever, and we're really trying to professionalize and centralize our human resources operation. And I think that our department heads, and some have already commented to me personally, that they now understand that Karen's going to be a huge asset to them, not someone that is nitpicky and asking for certain things or whatever, that she's already proven to be very helpful to them. But we're talking about COVID and hiring process and recruiting and the retention of employee records and communication and whatever. And she's going to have regular communication with all of our department heads as well. So I'm delighted at how that has turned out so far. There's been several questions. One of the things that I'm doing as a new manager is I'm looking at all of the policies and procedures, and as time permits, trying to update them, as always needs to be the case in any city. We have a reimbursement and a meals reimbursement policy that has raised concerns, and I want to just briefly discuss that with you. In 2010, the City Council adopted a policy that allows for reimbursement for meals when an employee goes to a convention. The policy does not require documentation. And so for an auditor, that immediately raises a red flag about accountability and transparency or whatever. And I've had an opportunity to talk to our new auditor, who has shared her concerns about this policy with us. Because we have kind of 2 issues happening here that don't happen in some other communities, and that is we allow for prepayment of meals, and then we don't require any documentation. So from an auditing standpoint, from an employee standpoint, it's terrific. From an auditing standpoint, it's not good at all. And so I'm proposing that we change the form that is filed. First of all, when you take a trip, there's travel, which is pretty straightforward. If you're going to drive, it's easy to figure out what the mileage is, and we know what the rate is. So that's pretty black and white. That's pretty standard. And there's no reason from an auditing standpoint to change that whole issue. But for meals, it's different, because you don't know whether people are going to eat, and you don't know what's really going on or whatever. So I'm proposing that we end the upfront payment for meals, that we have a reimbursement, and that there be a certification on the form, so that when you come back from a conference, you sign a form that, yes, you had dinner, you had breakfast on Monday and Tuesday, and you had lunch on Wednesday, and you paid for it or whatever. We're not at this point asking for receipts or whatever, but just that you certify that. We just want to make sure, from an auditing standpoint, the problem is the money's supposed to be used for the purpose which it was appropriated, and our policy doesn't allow that. So I think with a minor change in the form, we could get more in line. And as I said, this doesn't affect travel. And usually when you take when you go to a conference, you're getting much more on the travel side than you are on the meal side. But this just cleans up the policy. I think I can correct it by changing the form. So I don't think that we need to amend the ordinance, the employee handbook. But since you adopted the employee handbook, I wanted to let you know about it, that I'm not going to change something without you knowing about it. So with that minor change, doing it after the fact, certifying that you did in fact have 3 breakfasts and 2 lunches or whatever, I think it covers us.
Mr. Mayor, if I may. I feel like, first of all, I think that this was already kind of being considered, and I noticed when I was signing checks, and I raised it to you again about this, because when I was signing checks for travel for these reimbursements, I was appalled at at some of the reimbursement forms that were just kind of checked across, everybody checked everything. Breakfast, lunch, dinner across the board. And I'm just like, yeah, that's, first, it's my experience having worked for the federal government for a number of years, especially around per diem and that sort of thing. The guidelines were pretty strict. I mean, you didn't get to claim with the federal government. So at the embassies, you had two choices. The embassies had a choice to either say, we want receipts, or we are giving you an allowance, an expense. But that you have to incur that expense before you can claim it. And at one point, actually, the embassies, well, these embassies that I've been at had decided we're just going to give you a flat rate, because collected receipts and all of that, especially with that many employees, was just a nightmare. But it wasn't like that the employee could claim straight across the board unless they actually took advantage of it. I mean, that's what the expense was for. And so it was sort of a question of accounting for it. And I think, and we were talking about this, let me just say, so again, with the federal government, if you were somewhere where breakfast was provided, either by your hotel or by whatever conference you were attending, then you did get to claim breakfast flat out, you know, and that doesn't matter. Like for, let's say, GMA, every morning GMA provided breakfast. They provided, you know, and even though it was a continental, it wasn't bad actually. I mean, it was pretty substantial, fruit and whatever. No, you didn't think it was substantial? Well, for someone who doesn't really eat breakfast, it was great. Okay, so, but still, I mean, again, so the idea is, or if your hotel provides the breakfast, then you don't get to claim it. And I feel like, it's important for the council and to kind of set an example of being ethical on this. This isn't a free pass. This isn't, you know, it's like, oh boy, look, if I total all of this up, that's $500 I get. Well, the city's not giving you $500. The city's saying, we're going to reimburse you, you know, for your meal, and if you don't take the meal, you don't get the reimbursement. And sometimes, I mean, lunch is pretty generous, really. So if lunch is $15, well, you know, I might go out and have lunch for 10 or 8, but I still get the full 15. Anyway, the point is, I think this is really important. But I also feel like in the handbook, I think we need to be more clear about what our expectations are. I mean, I think it might still be too vague, and I think our employees need to know when Karen is, and I understand, Karen, you kind of looked at it and felt like an advance for meals wasn't really necessary if they were getting the mileage. Is that correct? Because the mileage really is above what you're going to pay, because it's also meant to be for wear and tear on your vehicle, in addition to, you know, the gas itself. But I feel like this is important. But again, I feel like maybe you may not, John. You may be happy with what's in the handbook. I just think we need to be clear about what our expectations are going forward with our employees that are claiming, you know, these per diem expenses, that you get it if you use it, and if you don't use it, you don't get it. Does that make sense?
We could put a sentence in the employee handbook along the lines that the money must be used for the purposes for which it's requested. That's it. Like, in one sentence, we could clarify that. That it's not a gift, it is. And once again, this really isn't driven by a belief of a lack of honesty or integrity. It's an accounting issue. Yeah. It's so that there's no documentation. Mileage, you can say, yeah, I went from here to Savannah, and it's 121 miles, and if you don't believe it, Google it, and we're allowed to get 50-something cents or whatever the mileage is, and so that's pretty straightforward. But the meals thing, there's no accountability, and short of requiring a ton of receipts, which is very onerous from a staff standpoint, the request is that as long as you're saying, because before the fact is like, I intend to have breakfast on Monday morning. Well, Monday morning, 15 minutes before you go to breakfast, you might bump into someone and say, hey, come to breakfast, I'll buy you breakfast, whatever. So you didn't buy breakfast, and so you wouldn't know that till after the fact. So I think simply if we switch it to after the fact, and you certify that you ate, that you bought your meals, and I think we're covered from an auditing standpoint. Right now, the auditors, because the auditors come in and they get a random sample of expenses. They'll look at this expense, that expense, or whatever. And I asked her, I said, Amanda, if you get one of these randomly and say, you pay this employee, she's going to say, where's the documentation? Because that's what she says about all the expenses. Where's the documentation on that expense? You say you spent $150 at the lawnmower shop. Where's your documentation? You have to have documentation. But in this, there's no documentation. So just from an accounting standpoint, it's awkward.
You know, I think, and, you know, having seen a lot of these expense reports, like all of us have as we sign checks, I think there's a perception in a lot of our employees, and maybe a lot of us as well, that that allowance is there, and it's totally discretionary whether you want to actually use that money to buy a meal or you're entitled to keep that money. I think we need to sort of clarify that these are to reimburse actual expenses made. But just having seen a bunch of these, I really think people think, well, the money is allocated. It is my discretion to decide whether I'm going to take that $10 and buy myself breakfast, or I'm just going to have a banana and I'm entitled to that $10. And it's not necessarily, I don't look at it as a dishonest thing, it's kind of a misunderstanding of the point of that reimbursement program. I think if someone's buying a meal and they're spending money, they should be reimbursed. But if they choose for whatever reason not to have that lunch or not to have that breakfast, then they should not be entitled to it. They need to think and be honest about, okay, well, I didn't really have a breakfast on Tuesday, so that's out. But I think there's this feeling that it's there. They have a right to make the decision whether to spend it on food or to put it in their wallet. Am I wrong in that? I think that's...
I think you're right.
I don't know if I agree with that or not. I feel like if we are getting an allowance for a meal, if we eat a meal, now I don't know, maybe everybody's not honest and some people might not be honest, but I don't think they don't understand. Is that what you're saying, Eric?
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking.
No, I don't, I mean, we are adults. Maybe it's a few people that don't understand, but I wouldn't put something down that I didn't, I don't know. Maybe I'm just too lenient with that, but I don't think someone would actually check a box to get $10. I mean, because if you think about a meal in this day and time, if I go to dinner, we're getting, what, $25, $27? If we stay in a hotel in Atlanta and we eat inside of that hotel downstairs, $27 is a drop in the bucket. I had 10 wings, some fries, and a soda, and it was $40. So the city didn't do anything, but it was a drop in the bucket for $27. Everything else I put in myself out of my own pocket plus a tip. So I don't know, maybe some people are dishonest, I don't know, but I think that everyone understands. Maybe we do need to put something in, as John said, to make sure they clarify to get it. I don't see myself going to Atlanta and taking $27 and going to get a bracelet or something else besides eating. I don't know. And then you need to also think about the people, they do serve breakfast at GMA, but is it a breakfast that everybody can eat? Is it something that you want that's at that breakfast?
That's a great breakfast to me.
That's to you. That's to
That's
you.
just me.
So it's not about just us, but
You give up on the eggs. You don't get any eggs.
I don't need any of it.
Except, well, that's right, but it may not be to your liking, so, and if it's not,
Right.
and then you choose to go somewhere and have your breakfast before you come, then that's one thing, but most people don't do that. Most people, I mean, so if you do, then of course, you claim, well, I don't know, I mean, we'll have to see how.
And we
how-
can't say
what
most
the- what
people
the
because you
justi-
don't know what most people do.
What the
That's what you might
justification
do.
is. Yeah, well, right.
Right.
And the thing is, sometimes when we go to GMA, as we know, the only people that get breakfast, those who are involved in GMA, and others stay in their hotel room until they have special meetings they have to attend, you know. So it's 2 or 3 ways to look at it. You know, it's 2 or 3 ways to look at it. Now, I do agree that don't put meals, don't fill out a form and get prepaid for meals that you're not going to eat. You know, you get it prepaid. I can see you get prepaid for gas mileage, but don't get prepaid for meals.
For meals, I see that as well.
And I
But you,
remember years ago, John, Rick and I remember, that when we was on council, we went to a convention, GMA, we had to bring receipts back. I mean, we literally had to bring
receipts.
receipts back.
And I can do that now.
Turn in, you know, to say, hey, I did spend $15 for breakfast. So what about, at that time, whatever amount you spent, you received that amount.
Yes.
You received that amount back. It wasn't $10, $25, or whatever coming to you. You know, you go to down and out with 2 people. It's, I mean, just one
$100.
person. It's ridiculous.
And I think, Mayor, that one idea behind doing it the way we do with a per diem is
Yeah.
if somebody wants to go out and have to a steakhouse, that's fine, but the city's going to pay $25.
Right.
And if they want to go to me, I always looked at it the opposite way too. If I went to Subway and it cost me $10, the city's still going to pay $25.
Right.
So it's a budgeting tool for the city, I think, to be able to, and a fairness thing. So
Right.
they pay everybody the same, whatever our taste is. If I want steak and lobster,
it.
the city's going to pay that
That's
much.
it.
And I'm fine with the, what Betsy is proposing. I only travel typically 1 time a year, and that's at GMA. And you know, at the hotel I stayed at, we had breakfast, and I didn't check breakfast, and I'm fine with that. It was delicious, but I think if you get into it too far, then what happens if you have breakfast, but it only costs you $6, but they pay us back 10? I mean, it's
a lot.
I think you can lose the idea of the tool that it is to make a fairness.
Yes.
Do you have to spend $10 or above to get $10 back, or do you know?
No, but I like your
Yeah.
rationale, where sometimes you spend more, sometimes you spend less. But what the city's saying, what the government's saying is, here's what you're allowed. You know,
And that's what, in my
Yeah, I
business
wouldn't-
that I ran in the private sector, I
Right.
had salespeople on the road, and I had it both ways. I had show me your receipt, then I'd go through and say, I'm not gonna buy your beer or your drink, or, you know, but
Yeah.
it's a fairness issue, it's a great tool, and in my business, I don't have any more, but I used to tell them, if you eat breakfast or not, I'm gonna pay you whatever, it was $5, or if you eat lunch or not, I'm still gonna pay you. But if you want to go to the steakhouse and get a $50 steak, I'm gonna pay you $20.
right, sure. No.
I kind of agree, and I agree with Rick, because we're saying if the food is there, we need to eat it. I don't agree with that. Because we had a luncheon at GMA, and they had beef and asparagus
Uh-huh.
and some mashed potatoes. I don't eat a big hunk of beef. I don't want it. I didn't want the asparagus, and I didn't want the potatoes. So I was at the luncheon, but I didn't eat lunch.
Got you.
So you can't say, I don't, you know what I'm saying? I didn't like anything that was there. They brought out a vegetarian meal. I didn't know what was in that. I didn't eat that either. So I went somewhere else and ate after the fact.
So what are you saying to clarify here? Just because they serve a meal means you have to eat the meal.
That's pretty much what we're saying now, and I'm not gonna eat it if I don't want it.
So what do you do?
The conference registration fee includes the meal. And you are paying for a meal in the registration, you do not need to claim.
You can't,
Right.
whether you like the beef or not.
Whether or not you like it or not. The city is already paying for a meal in the registration. You cannot double it.
I just have 2 more quick items, Mr. Mayor.
Sure,
That's fair enough, yep.
go ahead.
But you can't claim anything if you don't eat it. So even, so if the city's paying for your lunch, you don't get to claim it because it's paid for. If breakfast is provided and you don't eat it, or what, if you don't have lunch at all, you don't get to check the box and say, I had lunch.
You have to spend the money to be reimbursed.
That's right.
Which makes sense.
I think it's just a point of clarification more than, what's that? Oh, I've-
It just goes back also to, that kind of goes with the, if my lunch didn't cost me as much as what I'm getting, but I still ate lunch.
The reason that's not going to be an issue, because anybody going 2 or 3 days, you might have one breakfast that didn't cost $10 because you had 2 biscuits. But you're going to have a bunch of
Yeah.
dinners
Yeah.
that, you go to lunch, it's going to be more than $15. So in the end, I don't think that from an accounting standpoint that is an issue. Once again, this really is about auditing and accounting. And we're kind of hanging out there because we have prepayment and no receipts. And we're just saying we need to tighten it up just a little bit.
That's super, thanks.
Thank you, John. Appreciate that.
I wanted to mention to you, as we've talked in terms of our responsibility to provide gas service to Rivian in partnership with Covington and Social Circle, that it's been frustrating that we haven't been able to get the necessary documentation that would allow us to go borrow for the infrastructure. And I mentioned that the other day to Adnan Mestris, and he took it upon himself to inform Chairman Ben Ryden. And he wrote a letter on behalf of the city. So I just wanted to publicly recognize the chairman for helping us out, because we really do need someone to shake it up a little bit so that we can get the information. And it was awful nice of him to write a letter on our behalf. Karen has a list of surplus equipment. We want to get rid of stuff we don't need anymore. I think she passed it out. And what do you want on the consent agenda? So if there's any questions about that equipment, we can answer it, but we'd like to put that on the consent agenda. And the last item is, I just wanted to mention that over the next week, we'll be putting the T-Splost roads out to bid. If you need a refresher on what the streets were, I could email. I'll do that anyways. We'll email the streets just to refresh your memory or whatever, but we want to make sure we get that work done in this fiscal year.
So I do, if I may, one quick question about surplus. How do we divest ourselves of the surplus? If you remind me. Is this on?
Yes, once you declare this a surplus, we put it on Gov Deals.
Oh, okay.
Which is a public auction. And because anytime we get rid of machinery, equipment, property,
Gotcha.
it has to be through a public bid.
Okay. Thank you, Karen.
GovDeals.com. Could I
So-
add one thing to, just for the public's benefit under animal control? Just wanted to point out that we've had a kind of a close relationship with the county and animal control. The city animal control department has never housed animals. I just want the public to understand that. We're not losing the city's ability to house animals. We've never done that. We've always sort of subbed that out to our partners at the county. So in that respect, it's not like we're now going to the county pound, if you will, because we've always done that. I just wanted to make sure that the public understood that that has not changed. We're still bringing our animals, they're going to the same place they were before when we had an animal control officer for the city. Thank you, Mayor.
So has anybody got any calls since the county has taken over animal control?
Well, I believe John mentioned in the 1 month that this has been under effect, we've had like a small number of calls, 7 or 9 calls. Seven.
7.
Wow.
Great. So consent agenda for the surplus for Karen to do. Let's put this on the consent. Thank you so much. Okay. That it for you, John? Thanks for your report, sir. Are there any comments from the council members?
If I may, I have a couple comments. First of all, I noticed that that whole trash area around Amici has been cleaned up. Was that us cleaning that up?
You mean
The trash, the dumpsters and such behind Amici's? Uh-huh. It looks 100% better. I mean, I know we're still working on it, but oh my gosh, it looks, if you all haven't driven by, it's fabulous, so thank you for that. Two things, and I hate to be yelling, where are we with, I see the golf cart signs are up. Have we pulled the trigger on the date? I still see, because I'm still concerned about those people flying down the street with babies in their laps.
Does Ken or Karen, do you happen to know?
I talked with
Philip?
Code Enforcement Officer yesterday. They're trying to get everything in place, the signs.
It's supposed to be September 1st.
Signs are up, but the signs.
I think it's going to be a couple of weeks. They're going to put some ads in the newspaper. So it's going to be, I think, a couple of weeks, I think.
Aaron's got some information.
Oh, I'm sorry. Come on.
We've started putting up signs, we're not done.
Oh, I see.
So we've done, I think, on the major thoroughfares, I-20, Main Street, so now we're down to, the holdup is I have to do a locate. I can't just drive a post in the ground, because if I hit a gas line, then Rusty fusses me and I get to go to jail and all that kind of stuff. So anyway, it's just a process, a 3-day deal. So the side streets, Pine, Plum, all those little offbeat streets, we're just now going to concentrate to those. But the main deals have been posted. And the other thing is, we're just trying not to litter the site up with just 50,000 posts. So we're trying to strategically put a sign where it needs to be, but if there's already a sign there, we usually just try to use that one, just so we're not trying to add to the light litter.
Great, and I was just asking because I'm now getting calls because people are seeing it as they come into town. The signs, and that's great, and the signs look great, and thank you for that. I'm just needing to answer some questions that I'm getting about that. And were we going to have we talked about maybe doing a brochure or a handout sheet or, there he is. Thanks, Aaron.
Brochure's ready.
Okay.
And as Aaron said, we're down to the crossing points on federal state highways. And Philip is planning to, in addition to all our social media and everything, he's planning to run an ad in the newspaper when it's ready.
Okay, perfect.
Brochure's ready.
So that would be great. I mean, I was thinking even personally, I'm happy to give my neighbors who call me, a copy of the brochure or whatever, because I actually looked online, so it's not up online.
I can put it online today, and then Philip has signed off on the final draft, so we'll send it off to get printed.
Oh, cool, awesome. All right, I'll check in with you about that. Thank you very much for that. That's awesome. Yes, and then the other thing was an ordinance update that we talked about in terms of rentals, of our ordinance that we were going to tighten up a little bit. I thought we were going to put something in the newspaper about
My understanding
hearing.
is it's being planned for the October council meeting to be approved. So
Yeah, but don't we have to have it in, or is that, what's the timing on, is it 15 days, 30 days? What's our?
45 days. My understanding is that's being run in time for all of that. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Okay, super.
It's got to go through that whole.
It's got to go through planning commission and
Yeah. I just keep looking in the legals. I'm not seeing anything, but it's probably too soon for that, I guess.
Yeah,
Okay.
probably in the next week or so.
That's wonderful, and thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
On your point about the golf carts, are we set up, because the enforcement of this is not going to be Officer Malcolm. He's going to be approving the carts, but the person, after it's all in effect, the person driving down the road with the kids hanging off the back, that's going to be our police department who's going to be writing the citations. And so they need to be right along with us, knowing what their obligations are. Are the laws in place for penalties and all that kind of stuff?
This is the first I'm hearing about golf carts. I don't know. I'll be happy to look, but usually there's general golf cart rules. I'll be happy to look at the ordinance and see if we need to adopt anything.
Because they'll be the ones at the front line writing the tickets and enforcing our requirements.
It was a change to the motor vehicle code, so that would fall under police.
There you go.
And we've got penalties already set up for violations of the motor vehicle code.
Yeah, it uses the general penalty that
Right.
just like the alcohol and dangerous dog.
And that's actually already in the ordinance. So it's, what the consequences are in the ordinance already. Yeah, super.
And
Thank
Eric,
you.
I think once they come and apply for a golf cart license or a permit, they're given a copy of the ordinance when they get that permit, so they know what to expect.
Including the seat belts and the.
Yeah.
Because I believe it's no one under age
7.
7 or something can't be on the carts ever in any form.
So, yes, sir.
Mr. Mayor, I just wanted to mention, and I don't think it's the city, but I think it's a concern that I have, the southbound bypass coming past the hospital if you were going to turn left on 441 south. That turn lane, and it amazes me the amount of traffic on the bypass now compared to years past. I mean, it's incredible, but any given time that I go there, and if I leave Walmart, for instance, and I'm at that light trying to turn left to get back into town, the turn lane for southbound traffic is not long enough. It's 2 lanes and a turn lane, and the vehicles are out in the travel lane, and they drive fast. To me, it's a huge safety concern that I hope the DOT is on top of and can hopefully resolve before somebody gets hurt.
Yeah, so GDOT has a project that's moving forward there, and they're going to be adding a second turn lane. Using the existing lanes that are there, they're also going to be adding a second through lane at Walmart going southbound. There'll be some other improvements, but they'll be fairly minor on Lions Club and northbound on 441. The main focus is those southbound movements. But that project is under design right now. It's still currently not funded. So that was in the presentation that I gave on bypass and all the infrastructure and projects that are going on. So it's under design, still not funded. We are talking with GDOT about it, and John and I are trying to come up with a plan to kind of push them a little bit and get that construction funded on it. So, but design's moving forward. That's a good thing. I believe it's state funds, which means it can move fast. Federal funds move slow, state funds move fast.
So maybe in Rick's lifetime, what about my lifetime? Am I going to see that second lane?
Yeah, it seems to be a priority for GDOT, but we don't have a timeline on construction. When we have one, we'll pass it on to you, though. I'm hoping to be able to find out soon about that. The district's doing the work right now, which typically they move a lot faster than if the general office is in Atlanta.
Because thank goodness that's a long left turn green light.
It is.
But if they could do 2 lanes, it wouldn't need as much time than the other traffic. It can move more efficiently. It seems like a no-brainer, Rick. I agree.
And hopefully, if they're looking at that whole intersection, I know you already went away, but it's also heading to I-20 on Houston Highway.
Say. It's that right turn lane to go like between Lowe's and Walmart. You know, everybody's sitting up, everybody's heading out to I-20. You know, that just backs up. If there was a room to do a right turn there, that would really.
I think that's a huge project, the program for 2035. Oh, wow. So that's a longer term project.
I see.
Lions Club road improvements. We are hoping to be able to bring them to move that faster, but state funds are where they are right now. They're spending a lot of money on big infrastructure in Atlanta, and so we've got to compete with that.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Thanks for the update. Appreciate that. So we have something to look forward to. That's it. Okay. I have a call. September is children who have cancer, who have passed away with cancer, and we would like for the city to declare proclamation as September as Children's Cancer Month. Council have any problem doing that? I have a family who lives here who lost a child with cancer, and they just brought it to our attention. And cancer is just a mean disease we all have. We just have to live with it. Thank you so much. That comments from the public. We normally don't take comments from the public, you know, but Mr. Chapman, I think you wanted to say something. You're here, you're good? Okay, good, okay. There's nothing else? Our meeting is adjourned. Thank you so much.